Hello everyone, welcome back to Skeledon, Bushcraft, and Survival. Thank you very much for joining me in this video. Now I've looked at different things that I have done for wilderness living, and one thing that I have not done yet is water purification. So that's exactly what we're going to do today. Now before we get started, I am going to be saying a lot of things. I'm going to be talking about and explaining different subjects that has to do with water purification that I haven't seen anybody else do. When it comes to water purification, individual they have, but for water purification, they kind of just skip over these steps. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that today. Now, I'm going to try to keep the video as short as possible, but it may run a little bit more. It might be between the 10 and 15 mark. So let's get started. All right. First thing you're going to need is water. All right, you found water, but how are you going to carry it? Containers. That's one of the 10 C's, containers. It's always best to carry something along with you so that you can carry water in and stuff like that, cook with. There are methods that you can use out in the wild and to make those containers, but it takes time and energy. So it's always better just to be prepared when you can and bring some along with you. For me, I carry a stainless steel water bottle with a stainless steel cap and bail and a stainless steel pot for boiling water, stews, or whatever. Alright, so we got our water, now we need to purify it. Now the best way of doing that is making yourself a filter, a filtration unit. Okay, a filtration system, however you want to say it. Now, there are many different methods that you can do that. For me, today, I'm going to show you a bark filter. So we've got to get our bark, and then we'll go on to the other stuff that needs to go inside. Alright, now choosing the bark that we need, there's a lot of different options that we can choose, and most generally what I see is using from the 3 trees that produce water, and that's sugar maple, beech, and birch. That's great and wonderful. The bark works great, it's pliable, easy to use, and it's fast to get. The only thing of it is that if it any way possible that you can get from a tree that isn't a water producing tree, but still is non-toxic, maybe even edible, like this one right here, that's what I would suggest to go for, instead of killing a tree. Like for instance, this specific one right here is a pawpaw. It is a dead standing tree. It died sometime mid last year. You can tell by the bark below, but it still has moisture in it. Now one thing about pawpaw is it has a very thick bark, so what I had to do was shave it off like this right here. And first I tested it up here because it is dead, but I tested it up here just to make sure that it would work for me. Then I came down here and I shaved off all the outer bark of it, cut all the way around, top and bottom, made a slit straight down, and then carefully peeled it off. Now this is one of those things that you do need to take your time with, because the bark can easily rip, tear, or even break. And then all that work that you've done is worth nothing. So, the other thing that I want to talk about that most people don't talk about is how long you need it. Now, the rule of thumb with water purifying itself is 15 feet. That's not always true. However, that is a rule of thumb for a reason. So, having a short little funnel and packing it full of stuff, you might have to do that 3 or 4 times, running it through. And each time you really need to put new stuff in because it is removing stuff along the way. So the longer you can get it, the better. In this case, I did it about 16 to 18 inches, and that's a rough guesstimate. I didn't put a tape measure to this. But nevertheless, now that we have a bark, all we got to do is just fold it up so that we're making a funnel. Just like that right there. It's bigger on top than it is on bottom. And to hold it together, make a little stick. Carve it out, and that way you can slide it on here. That will hold the top part, and the bottom part Just do a clove hitch on it with some cordage and it'll hold fine. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we're going to go ahead and get the other components that go into the filter. Alright, and the second thing that I want to talk about is one of the major components that go into a water purifier. Now, what we're doing here is we're making a 3-stage water purifier, right? Now, I use 4 materials. Some people only use 3 materials. I feel more comfortable with 4, but it's still a 3-stage. The purpose of a 3-stage is to remove 3 of the 5 impurities in water. Now, you can get down to the brass tacks and say that, yeah, but there's millions of bacteria, millions of parasites, millions of viruses, millions of chemicals, and millions of debris. But basing it all down, if you remove those 5 that I just mentioned, it takes care of everything. And a 3-stage purifier normally takes out the debris, chemicals, and some of the bacteria. Now, it won't remove all of the bacteria, but you need to boil it afterwards, which removes the last 2 and makes sure that bacteria is gone. And of course, the last 2 is parasites and viruses. Now, charcoal works really good in removing the chemicals. The only thing of it is everything that I see is just charred wood. Now, there really is a difference between charred wood and charcoal. Charcoal is created in the same manner that you would make char cloth or punky wood. If you know how to do that, then you know how to make charcoal. The only difference is that instead of using punky wood and cotton, you're using hardwood. And it has to be hardwood, whether it be hickory, oak, sycamore, maple. It has to be a hardwood. Now, it's best to use hardwoods that doesn't have any toxins in it. Oak is one of those that do. However, by charring it, you're actually removing the tannins, so it's safe. Alright, so what I have here is my tin that I char my char cloth in. I cut up some sycamore, I put it in there, I charred it up, and of course put this in the fire. It's got a ventilation hole on top so that it can release the gases. The gases will catch on fire, but the contents inside won't. Another thing too is a rule of thumb is when you're looking at it, when it stops smoking, it's ready to take off the fire. When you take it off the fire, make sure that it's of course completely cool before you open it up. Otherwise, if there's any heat inside, if there's any oxygen that hits it, flame. In this case, it would be ashes instead of charcoal. Alright, the other components that I use is grass, sand, and gravel. Alright, so like I said, the 3 things that I'm going to look for is grass, sand, and gravel. Now, grass can be found all over the woods. And just tuff it in there, and just make sure that it's room and water will go through, and you're fine. But that is the first thing that I put in because it actually keeps the other stuff in as well. And then of course sand can be found around a creek bed, and gravel can too. And so I'm going to go ahead around here, scoop up some gravel. What I'm wanting to do, just letting you know, I'll put the gravel up about here. I'm sorry, the sand up around here, and I'll put the gravel up around here. And the only thing that I've put in here now is grass, because the very next thing that I want to put in there is charcoal. So, I normally put charcoal in 2 places. Number 1, I put charcoal in right after the grass. And then, after I put my sand and gravel, I put charcoal on top. So I've got it set up, hanging right over the pot. All I have to do is just pour the water in, let it run all the way through, and when it's done, we can boil it and finish it up. So it's already ran through, filled it up. It's still dripping, so I'm just letting it sit there. Also, something that I didn't bring up prior to, and I should have, when you first make this, make sure that you run water through it at least a little bit, because there will be some stuff inside that you'll want to flush out before you actually put it into the pot. So just run a little bit through it and let that drain out, and then you can put it over the pot and finish it up. Now, for the most part, it's pretty clear water, but we still need to boil it. Alright, once you boil it, let it come completely cool, cool to the touch, and you're good to go. I'm not going to make you watch boiling water. Everybody knows how to boil water. The purpose of this video was to go through the different things that really need to be talked about when it comes to water purification. So I have already put it in here, and it's good to go. The only thing is the very last thing that I want to talk about, and that is electrolytes. Everybody talks about you need to replenish electrolytes as well as water. I don't see a store around here. So that means I can't get electrolytes? In all actuality, yes we can. We can get electrolytes. And the reason why is because we know exactly what electrolytes are, what they do for us, and how to make them, right? Alright, what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to bring up the actual definition of electrolytes, because this is something that actually aggravates me. When you look up what is electrolytes on Google, it'll give you a whole list of stuff that is extremely hard to understand unless you're a chemist. But when you really dig deep and start learning different definitions and this and that, it comes up. An electrolyte is a substance that dissociates into ions in solution, acquires the capacity to conduct electricity. An electrolyte is a substance that produces an electrically conducting solution when dissolved in a polar solvent such as water, regular water. Sodium, potassium, chloride, calcium, magnesium, and phosphate are just examples of electrolytes. In fact, you can take normal table salt, sprinkle a little in a glass of water, and voila, you have electrolytes. It's that simple. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because everything that you read points to you got to go to the store and you got to buy this and you got to buy that. It is true that salt water is bad. It will dehydrate you. And because of that, it will have other effects, such as nausea, followed by vomiting, and the worst, diarrhea. But electrolytes, on the other hand, which is created by salt in water, can actually prevent that. So just remember, when you're doing it, a liter of water and just a few granules of salt. A little goes a long way. Those few granules of salt will actually dissolve in the water and become electrolytes. And having salt along with you is actually a good idea too. Along with the things that you're supposed to carry with you, it's a real good idea to have salt, pepper, ginger, cinnamon, because they have medicinal purposes as well. So you've got salt with you, sprinkle a little bit in a liter of water, and you've got yourself water that is infused with electrolytes. And it'll help you out. I also want to mention that if the water tastes salty, you've added too much. You shouldn't taste any salt whatsoever if you put enough in there just to become electrolytes. So, now you know what electrolytes are and how to make them. So that's going to be it for me today. Thank you very much for coming along. I hope that you learned something. I hope that this information helps. And until next time, take care. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you like this type of video, please like, share, and subscribe. I have many more coming up in the future. Until then, take care. And remember, nature, it does provide.